very much, Jane, and good morning, everybody, and a very happy Pride. You might wonder why I'm very, very proud, actually, to be here on the day of the Pride Parade, but it also means, sadly, that I won't be able to stay for the remainder of the conference, as I have many duties, pleasures and responsibilities over the next 2 days. But in fact, I'm going to try and put a bit of context and history on this. And I want to start very personally and to say that when I think about it, when I think back over the history of the struggle for the right to abortion, what I'm in this country, what I'm really looking at is actually, in a way, the story of my life and the lives of so many women of my generation in this country. And in a way that explains why I am a member of a number of organisations, not every organisation, and I'm a member of a number of organisations because we have had as a feminist, as an LGBT activist, as a socialist, because we have had so many battles to fight in this country. And if I just think, as I say, about my own life, it really has been marked by those battles. And in so many of those battles, the Roman Holy Catholic Church of Ireland and the world has figured extremely prominently. So it is really important for this conference to be taking place here today. When I was a young woman, I couldn't get contraception. There was no such thing as the availability of contraception. That didn't actually happen until 1992. Now that's a long time for a woman. When you think about it, I see young women shaking their heads here, but that was the reality. You could not actually buy a condom in this country until 1992, officially and formally, although the students in Trinity, and I think maybe even Claire Daly among them, had fought a very, very hard battle for that all along the years. And so did women, so did the Irish Family Planning Association. But we forget about that the struggle for abortion lies on all of this foundation of struggle and of battle for very, very basic needs and for very, very basic rights. That was contraception. But we couldn't get divorced in this country, if you remember, until 1995, in fact 96, when the law became, when the law was enacted. And as a young woman, I had done what I was brought up to do, which was to get myself a job, which was something that you could actually still get in those days, just about, and get married. And as soon as I got married, literally, as I was coming back down the aisle, I said to myself, this is a bit of a mistake, this is definitely a mistake. And within 6 months, I was proved absolutely right. It was a total mistake, but that was way back in the early 1970s. And I was not able to get a divorce until 1996. Now, I was more than 20 years without a divorce. And at that stage, I had my daughter, my lovely daughter Lydia, back in the mid-1970s, as was known, out of wedlock. And at that time, indeed, the status of illegitimacy still existed. She would not have been entitled to the benefits of my pension from the otherwise extremely ungenerous UCD. And I had to take that to my union, who eventually took a case for it. And I still, there were still couldn't have contraception, still no sign of abortion whatsoever. And in the meantime then, people say they come out as lesbian. It sort of happens, it evolves, and you come out every day, like this morning, like everywhere, it's a constant thing. So, but over that period of time, let's say I realised, because I kept falling in love with women, I realised I absolutely must be lesbian. And the penny eventually dropped. But that was not something that I could talk about, and it was not something I could say. And again, as you know, male homosexuality was not decriminalised in this country until 1992. So let's put our struggle for abortion, and let's put our lives as women into the context of that history, which really has marked generations in this country. But why is it that abortion is such the hugely resistant issue? The Constitutional Convention voted 83% to recommend same-sex marriage for lesbian and gay people. Contraception we got, divorce we got. But each time there has been an opportunity, abortion has been pushed back. But to some extent, it is because I believe we have never been asked in this country the right question. Because when you look at the polls in this country over the past 20 years, you discover that the vast majority of people in Ireland are in fact in favour of abortion, to some extent, and increasingly to a very large extent. In the last polls, over 80% of people said that they favoured abortion to save a woman's life and to protect a woman's health, and in cases of rape and incest, and almost 40% in that poll in June, just earlier this month, the Red C poll in the Irish Times, over almost 40% said they favoured abortion when a woman deemed it to be in her best interests. In other words, a woman's right to choose when to have, if and when to have an abortion. I mean, that is absolutely massive, massive progress. So in the last 3 minutes remaining to me, I am now going to give you the history of that struggle. Because I think sometimes we think, because it's been so much on our agendas, that it's 21 years since the X case judgment in the Supreme Court, and that basically is the struggle. Not so. The 1861 Offences Against the Person Act was what actually put into our legislative system the prohibition against abortion, punishable by a life sentence of penal servitude for anyone who procured or helped to procure an abortion. And that law was still in place. In fact, that law is still in vigour in this country. That law is still in place as I speak to you this morning. And in 1979, a very small group of women set up a women's right to choose group, very much against the grain of perhaps the society as a whole, but absolutely within the strong and proud lineage of feminist activism. And of course, that was known about, that was heard about, and instantly an anti-abortion lobby, a so-called pro-life lobby, formed, and it was very significantly and richly funded by sources which we attempted to track way back at the beginning of the 1980s, with funding coming from the US, from North America, but specifically from the US. And that appears to be still the case today. And as you know, eventually we had the amendment put in the Constitution, the 8th Amendment in 1983, which purported to allocate, so to speak, an equal right to life to the fetus and the woman, or to the unborn and the mother, which is the quite incorrect terminology used actually in the Constitution. But in 1992, following the Supreme Court judgment in the Court of X, and in the referendum that we had, Irish people very firmly said no, we do not want to turn back the threat of suicide. We don't want to remove that from being a basis for a lawful termination of pregnancy in this country. And furthermore, we voted in favour of information and the right to travel. Information about abortion and the right to travel. When you think about it, we say we're a democracy. Why did we have to vote for the right to travel? Why did we have to vote for the right to information? It was the most incredible and insulting referendum that I have ever participated in this country, and I've now participated in many. That was followed, as we know, by a number of court cases, which sadly were also bookended, so to speak, by very tragic and sad deaths of women who, had they been able to obtain an abortion at the appropriate time, their lives would have been saved. And that is the great shame, that is the great blot, that is the great guilt that we need to carry with us as a society, that we did not prevent those deaths from occurring when indeed we could have done. And those sad deaths and the also equally sad court cases that followed, because in each one of those cases there is a woman, sometimes a child, at the centre of that, whose life can hardly have been helped, whose life can hardly have been enriched, whose life must have been difficult for that young woman or that child to find the strength to flourish after it. And subsequently, as we know, we had a further referendum in 2002, and that was very much egged on by the Catholic Church, asking us again would we not now reconsider and throw out suicide? So this notion that if the people don't give the right answer first, you keep asking them again and again and again, which we've had in relation to European Union treaties and which we've had in relation to abortion. The people very sensibly said, no, we have spoken and we do not want to remove suicide as a real risk to the threat of suicide as a real risk to a woman's life. And finally, as we know, following again very difficult cases, the D case that went to Europe and the ABC cases that were brought by the Irish Family Planning Association to Europe, that the government was obliged on foot of the ruling in the European Court to clarify the situation in relation to abortion, i.e. when would it be lawful in this country. And that then, as soon as that had come through, and yet another expert group, the 4th, the 5th, or the 6th, I don't remember how many, was set up to advise the government on that. The government decided it would legislate and introduce guidelines, and following that we had the very sad death of Savita Halappanavar, which again brought the matter to the huge, wide attention of the public that this was far from sorted. And now we have a government who are introducing a bill which, to tell you the truth, makes me weep. It is a first step, certainly, but it makes me weep because it's rubbish. It will not stop one single woman going to the UK and at least 4,000 go abroad every year. It is not even clear that it will really clarify the situation for medical practitioners in our hospitals throughout the country, some of whom, I understand, Ross will have more information, do not have the appropriate training to make these judgments in any case. It will not solve this question. We will be back again, not me, not you, not maybe you. Women will be back in the courts again with more test cases. There will be further, I hope there will not be more tragedies, but there certainly will not be a solution until such time as we repeal the 8th Amendment to the Constitution, go back to zero, start off again and ask the simple question, what is it that women need with respect to reproductive rights? Let us legislate for that, and let's get on with it and stop blighting the lives of so many women. Thank you all very much.